So good morning. Good morning and welcome to what Harry Truman called Washington's second best address. I want to thank Bob Hugan and really the entire Celgene team for the hard work that they've done in organizing this meeting. And I want to particularly thank all of our board members and particularly Ian Reed, our incoming chairman, for supporting the meeting and most importantly for the great work that their colleagues do on behalf of patients all over the world. Thank you all for joining at PhRMA's 56th annual meeting. You know, it was a great Italian-American leader, Tony Soprano, who once said that remember when is the cheapest form of conversation, that looking backwards is easy, and that there's no risk in it. You know, I think there's one that is easier, especially here in Washington, and that's talking about collaboration. Collaboration may roll off the tongue. It's easy to say, but it's much harder to do. It's much harder to get outside your zone of comfort, to look far forward and to do something that's entirely new. Perhaps more than any other industry, we get this, because it's precisely what we're doing now. While the biopharmaceutical research process is complex and costly, for most of our history, our industry has outperformed the most optimistic observers' forecast. We've created new medicines that have helped usher people all over the world towards a longer and better and healthier life. We've built businesses that employ hundreds of thousands of talented workers and that drive hundreds of billions of dollars of U.S. economic output every year. Our industries help forge America's competitive edge. But our business, our science, our marketplace are changing. We need to look far forward. We need to move to something entirely new. So how do we continue to compete? By joining hands, by building new strength and breadth, by adapting and by leading. And this morning I'm going to talk about some specific new collaborations that are getting this industry and this country out ahead of change and are sharpening our competitive edge once again. You know, they begin in the realm of original industrial collaboration, and that's research and development. R&D is the root system of the entire enterprise. Everything grows from it. Brilliant medicines and thriving businesses. Our companies invest more than 10 times the amount of R&D per employee than all other manufacturing industries. As you will see in this year's PhRMA profile, which is hot off the presses, in 2013, PhRMA member companies poured more than $50 billion into the discovery and the development process of new medicines. And since 2000, they have invested more than $1.5 trillion in research and development. The effects of this ripple out beyond the enterprise. We support nearly 3.4 million American jobs. The overall impact on the U.S. economy is $789 billion annually. But like any organism or a process, the business and the research model at its heart must adapt to grow in an evolving environment. And the environment is evolving. In the United States today, for example, almost 26 million people have diabetes. That is 1 in every 10 Americans. And if the current trends continue, 1 in 3 Americans will suffer from this disease by the year 2050. And we're working hard to get out in front of these trends. In February, PhRMA reported that America's biopharmaceutical companies are developing 180 new medicines to help those 26 million Americans with diabetes and to help the other 375 million people around the globe that suffer this disease. Now, whether it's diabetes or cancer or heart disease or neurological disorders, rare diseases or Parkinson's, the quality and breadth of the science is staggering. In total, right now, more than 5,400 potential new medicines are in development around the globe. How do we move so far? through collaboration. Because the task is too big, the risk is too great, and the consequences of failure is too profound. You know, recently, as Chris Viehbacher told the Wall Street Journal, the science has become so complex, you can't possibly be an expert in everything. Now, in tandem with this burgeoning pipeline, our industry is seeking ways to work across the innovative ecosystem, with academia, with government, with patient groups, with smaller companies, and with other sectors of the economy. Collaborations like the one we announced last November with the Genetic Alliance. The goal? To use a technology-based, crowdsourcing approach to patient engagement in the drug development process, using it as a complement to the ongoing work that is being done with the FDA. This is not talking about it. This is actually doing. Actively collaborating where in the past we have not. Now, it's too early to discuss the initial results, but as you know, FDA Commissioner Margaret Hamburg will be joining us this morning. So perhaps she'll be kind enough to give us her perspective on these kinds of collaborations. In February, we announced the Accelerating Medicines Partnership. And this is a new collaboration between PhRMA, 10 of our member companies, the National Institutes of Health, and a number of nonprofit disease groups. It will focus their scientific firepower on elusive diseases like Alzheimer's, lupus, and diabetes. Now, some cling to the belief that government and business enterprise shouldn't mix. And these are the same people who would deny that NASA and private business partnered to send men to the moon. They deny that DARPA and private business developed the World Wide Web, which is allowing us to stream this meeting around the globe. We cannot deny or delay progress. And this new partnership will integrate government and business research streams at an earlier stage than ever before. It is emblematic of the collaborative change that we seek and that we think will have the greatest benefit for patients in the future. Just this week, another example, Project DataSphere launched. It's an independent initiative of the CEO Roundtable on Cancer, many of our member companies, and others. And it will enable greater understanding of cancer clinical trials. In research, we can't dwell in remember when. Instead, we're joining hands and minds to pursue imagine if. Because imagine if, manifested in smart risk-taking, can accelerate potential cures for patients. And we're not just talking about it, we're doing it. How else can we accelerate potential cures for patients? By plumbing more deeply into direct new collaborations with the patients themselves. The development of new medicines is a long and complex and costly process. When we get closer to patients, we get closer to determining what may work and what may not work. And we're doing it earlier. We all know that the clinical trial process relies heavily on volunteer participation, and it has been invaluable in sharpening the therapeutic focus of disease targets. But when we think that bringing in more data and more points of view can give us even a closer look. And here again, collaboration is key. In January, we started a new transcontinental collaboration on clinical trial data sharing. It makes new information available to the public, to patients who participate in clinical trials, and to qualified researchers. It also maintains patient privacy. And just last month, we launched the first of its kind national campaign to help expand diversity in clinical trials. The campaign, in partnership with the National Minority Quality Forum, is called I'm In, because historically, African Americans and Hispanics have been underrepresented in clinical research. Less than 3% of cancer clinical trial participants are Asian Americans, and only 1% of all trial participants are Hispanic. Now, an excellent video that was created for the launch of I'm In sums it up perfectly. It says, it's not enough to wait for someone else to act. We all have a role to play. We all have a responsibility to each other and to future generations. New collaborations in research, new partnerships with patients. What do they all add up to? It's simple. On one hand, we make medicines. On the other hand, patients need and deserve them. These collaborations help bring the two together. They will help expand patient access. But still, we need to do more. To be frank, we need to make medicines more affordable, both here in the United States and around the world. We need to create a collaborative environment that is open to ensuring coverage and payment by those who can afford to sustain innovation. But we must recognize that there are those who cannot. The challenge is universal. The answer must be as well. We speak to this in the universal coverage principles that PhRMA and our counterparts IFPMA and JPMA recently announced in London. But we are just one industry, and no matter how strong, we can't do it alone. No business, no single industry, no single government can. So we need more and better collaborations across businesses, across industries, and across nations. Not just talking about it, but doing it. In turn, governments and industries like those in India should recognize and welcome that they cannot do it alone. Innovation and sustainable access are not mutually exclusive, but mutually dependent. Remember when may be a regular conversation in the world's largest democracy, but we want to collaborate towards a future solution. Imagine if. Imagine if we do for Indian patients and for the world's patients. Now, we're making progress. Here at home, millions of Americans have access to health insurance through the new exchanges. But they also must have access to the medicines that they need to best manage their health. And while the exchanges, are still evolving, we need to work together to ensure that coverage in the exchanges more closely resembles coverage in employer plans. Medicare Part D is a resounding success. Through collaboration and competition that are inherent in the program, seniors have access to the medicines that they need. Premiums have stayed low. Satisfaction rates remain incredibly high, and interestingly enough, the costs are 45% below initial estimates. I know we were all encouraged by last month's decision to let Part D continue to have this success. And we've attacked the lingering challenge of orphan drugs. There are more than 400 medicines in development to treat or prevent rare diseases. Looking ahead, we need to find the right balance. To the extent that we have success, and ensure that continuing innovation is across broader therapeutic areas. But there's still more to do. We all need to better define the cost of innovation relative to the value of the medicines. Policymakers also need to value innovation and stop implying that it comes cheap, that it's transient, that it can be turned off and turned on. Recent developments in the treatment of hepatitis C serve as a great example of how this dialogue around value is askew. For the first time, 150 million people who are chronically infected with hepatitis C can be treated and cured of this terrible disease. They will no longer face a lifetime of medications, of hospitalization, a potential liver transplant, and other serious complications. Their lives, in short, will be transformed. Yet nearly all of the focus has been on the cost of the medicines. Costs can be very narrowly quantified, but the value to these patients and to their loved ones in society, you can't put a price on it. You know very well that the R&D process is long and costly. And you know that patients with cancer, hepatitis C, or debilitating chronic diseases are often subject to greater cost sharing from their insurance compared with other healthcare services. We must work together to address this troubling dynamic. We also need to work toward a modern and transparent regulatory system to ensure that patients get access to new medicines and get them fast. After all, when science changes, and it is changing, you need to change the systems with it. Some of the collaborations I mentioned can help all of us here. And we'll discuss this more in the parallel sessions later this morning. We also need to ensure that the systems are built that are respect and protect patients and their privacy. I mentioned the new PhRMA FPA data sharing principles. But for those who think that open source software is analogous to open source clinical trials, it isn't. While data sharing is essential to research and development, it needs to be balanced against patient privacy. The human being is simply not an operating system. Similarly, companies will only continue to invest if there are fair returns and a commitment to protect intellectual property. We know risk. Smart risk-taking built this industry. But give us some certainty so we can make pragmatic investments. Now, done right, trade agreements like the Trans-Pacific Partnership can provide that kind of confidence. The collaborative choices that we make around key policy areas like coverage for payment for medical innovation, the U.S. regulatory system, and the intellectual property protections will all have enormous ramifications going forward. Today we're releasing a new report from Battelle that really speaks volumes. Among its findings, the analysis reveals two possible growth trajectories for the pharmaceutical sector, the biopharmaceutical sector in the United States over the next 10 years. The report shows that more than 300,000 retained and newly created jobs are at stake between the two scenarios that it examines. These alternate futures are largely dependent on policy choices that are made here in the United States. Some will ask, isn't all of this, what we call research and progress and hope, your job? And I'll reply, you're damn right it is. But we recognize that there are some things in this job that we can do better. We will continue to communicate with people where they live and where they work, and all of our new and expanded collaborations are just a beginning. You'll see more. And today, we are an accessible and transparent pharma that will surprise even our toughest critics. Heck, some of them may be sitting here right now. And to them, I say welcome. It won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is. We promise to be open, to be honest and frank, and we ask the same in return. Together, we will research new cures. We will join hands towards progress, and together, we will celebrate hope. Thank you.